G'day, I'm Mark from Self-Sufficient Me, and in this video I'm going to give you my 5 top tips on when to harvest your fruit and vegetables. Let's get into it. Number 1 is colour. Nature has selected colour, or the change of colour, as a signifier for ripe fruit and veg. It's not for everything, but it is an indicator for tons of things we like to eat. And this orange, it's a Valencia orange. I love the name, but it's such a classic and easy food in this category because it turns orange just like its name. And you know, when it turns orange like this, it's right to eat. Quick quiz. Which one of these strawberries is ripe? Well done, Emma. You're first. Of course, it's the red one. Strawberries have evolved to let us know when they're right to eat. It's not because a strawberry thinks about humans or animals. It's because a strawberry thinks about itself. And when the strawberry is ready to be able to propagate it and the seeds on the outside are formed, it then changes colour so that when something eats it, it can distribute the seed around, like all these birds going off in the background. It's the same thing for the mulberry tree behind me here. You don't want to eat mulberries that are green or red, do you? Let me tell you a quick but entertaining story about mulberries. When I was a young fella in primary school, there used to be a big mulberry tree that was in the laneway near our school. And on the way home one day, I was walking past it and it got the better of me. I knew the mulberries weren't fully ripe. They were halfway there, but I just loved mulberries and I thought I was hungry. I didn't have a lot of lunch that day, so I started eating them and they weren't too bad. They were, you know, red, nearly going ripe, and I ate a ton of them. When I got home, I was starting to feel a little bit odd. Then I noticed my stomach swelled like a pregnant woman. Worse than now. I remember my mother saying to me, because she saw my hands, "Mark, were you eating mulberries? Did you eat too many?" She said, "Worse still, did you maybe eat some that aren't properly ripe, because you know they can make you a bit sick?" Just after she said that, I shot off straight to the toilet and I had to have a bit of a chunder in the toilet bowl, and I tell you what, that was not a pretty sight. You can even apply colour, well, sort of, to some vegetables. Look at these potatoes, for instance. How do you know if they're ready? Well, they go from being nice and green to dying back, changing colour, going brown, going a light green, and that means the plant is on the way out. It's similar to peanuts, where the top of the plant dies back and then you know it's time to probably harvest them. So in this case, you're talking about foliage. Yes, of course, you can dig down and find out if those potatoes are ready. But then if you dig down too early, you could disturb the growth of the potato plant and it might not grow as good. So that's why for crops like turmeric, this one's coming up here, I let it die right back at the end of summer, before winter, and then once it's died back, then I dig it up and harvest the turmeric. And same for ginger. It goes brown and you know it's time to dig it out of the ground. Sometimes it's a combination of colour and something else. For example, this pineapple leaning over, you can't see it that good from that angle. It's leaning over and it's yellow. It's ready to harvest because it's ready, just about to snap off or get eaten and get dragged away and then grow somewhere else. If you pick them too early, they won't ripen on the bench. So it's imperative that you wait that little bit of extra and be patient for that pineapple to fall, knowing then it's ready to pick. Tip number 2 is size. Most veg in particular can be harvested at any time and it's still edible. This is a good example. Beans, if you harvest them too late, well then they can get really stringy and not as tasty. In this case, it's not too bad still, but leave it a little bit longer and it will start to swell, and then it might even get more bitter, but for sure it will be extra chewy. The same thing is for some root crops like radishes. Let me just pull out a couple of good examples here that I can see straight in here. Here's a smaller one, and then we've got a larger one. Hold on a sec, I just got to get a knife. See how fast that was? That's what happens, kids, when you eat your greens. You can get really quick. All right, let's cut this big fella open. Straight across the head there. Look, have a look at that. See how fibrous and open it is? It's starting to get. It's getting more chewy and yes, fibrous. Let's cut this little one open. See how knit together it is? Nice and close. Get rid of that dirt there. Crunchy, much better to eat than this would be. Of course, it does depend on the variety, because you can get a daikon or a Japanese radish that can grow really large and still be fine to eat at a big size. Knowing your variety and how big they're supposed to grow will help also when determining when to harvest. And then it's not always size that matters. It's tip number 3, which is use. Cucumbers can be used when you want to use them. If you want to let them grow bigger and then put them in a salad, that's fine. If you want to pickle them when they're smaller, that's cool too. We talked about beans before. If you want to use them just for general cooking, harvest them when they're young and small, or you can leave them grow big and then harvest the seeds once they've finished growing and put them in soups or casseroles. So it depends on the use. How about these awesome rows of beets? You can harvest them when they're small, you know, like this, and have crisp baby beets. They're tender and sweet. Or you can wait until they get larger or full size and still have a good beet to eat. We're coming into summer, so it's mango season, and look at these beautiful flowers. But you don't always have to eat mangoes ripe and sweet. You can pick them green and use them in a green mango salad, for example. So depending on your use, certain fruits might be harvested at a different time than the normal. And speaking of mangoes, we might as well roll into tip number 4, which is feel. Because this mango, well, it's not a mango, but it will be seen, is a perfect example. Because what if you do want them ripe? If you pick it too soon, the tree won't have enough time to deliver the sugars and the final ripening process that makes a mango taste nice. It'll taste kind of sour and not as sweet as it could be. So the best way I've found to tell when to harvest your mangoes is A, yes, you might get a blush of colour, but B, it's the feel, a light press on the fruit. And if it gives a little bit, combined with a bit of blush of colour swelling out on the nose of the mango, and of course its size, etc., for the variety, well then you know she's pretty well right to pick. Feeling the weight of a pumpkin is one of the ways that I use to tell if a pumpkin is ready to be harvested. Because if a pumpkin feels heavy for its size, it's usually ready to go. There's other ways too, of course, and other signs you need to know, and I've done a video on that, but feeling weight is one of them. We talked about berries and how you can tell by the colour, but what about a white mulberry like this? It stays white the whole time and it ripens white. Well, feel. If it doesn't feel like it wants to come away, well then it's not ready to be picked. And it's the same for many berries. This one here, we're getting towards the end of our mulberry season, but you can see it's not that ripe. It's not coming away very easily either. Same with raspberries and blueberries. If you feel it come away easy from the stem, just like this one here, well then you're probably gonna feel good eating it. And tip number 5 is timing, change of season, and even time of day. These onions here are a really good example. I know from experience the right time to harvest these onions. Sometimes the signs aren't always right, or they're not always really strong. For example, I know that if I don't harvest these onions at the beginning of summer, the humidity and the extra rain we get on that change of seasons will make the onions rot in the ground, even if they're still growing. Sometimes the onions will be dying off and they'll give you a better indication because the weather is hot and dry. But generally when it comes to that time of year, early summer, I will pull the onions up, no matter what size they've got to, and then let them dry in the shed or somewhere safe. You would have seen my garlic debacle a few videos back. Well, I harvested those bulbs too late in the season, and because of that, the bulbs were already starting to break up in the ground. If I would have left them too long, they would have started to rot or maybe even sprout, who knows. I've just planted some more sweet potato in this bed here. I've got several runners and it's starting to populate the bed nicely. I know its most productive growing time is through spring and summer, and possibly a little bit coming into autumn. But because the plant grows all year round and it can be lush all through winter, how do you know when the tubers are ready to harvest and when you can dig all this up? Well, I just wait for a period of time. I know around about 6 months, which takes me into about early winter, the tubers underneath should be about the right size. Yes, you can dig down and you can look and feel like some of the other tips I've given, but the main one for me is a timing factor. Avocados can be a tricky one, whereas here's a small one coming on here. Knowing the right season or timing for when avocados are usually ripe for that variety is key to knowing when to harvest. So yeah, of course, you look at size and how big it's supposed to be. That does help, but you can't go feel, because an avocado won't ripen on the tree. You have to pick it, and then you pick maybe a few or one, depending on how many you have, because you don't want to waste any, but put it in the pantry in a paper bag or something like that, and then you wait and see if that avocado ripens properly. If it doesn't ripen properly and it just shrivels up and goes bad, well, then you know it's not the right time. So some fruits and veg can be a little bit tricky. And time of day is just as important. For example, I harvested these cabbages at a time when I knew they were at their peak condition. I'm going to make sauerkraut, and I didn't want loose, dehydrated or saggy heads and leaves. I want them nice and crisp. And the way you do that is by ensuring it has its full water content. If you harvest them in the middle of the day, you're not going to get that. So you either harvest in the morning or in the evening after you've given them perhaps a drink that afternoon. It's the same for all salad crops. Lettuce, kale, hail the kale. You want to harvest at a cooler time of day, and then you'll get your best produce. And one last bonus tip. You shouldn't harvest fruit or veg in a thunderstorm with lightning, or if you're under fire. In both of those instances, you should take cover. Anyway, have I missed something? For sure I have. I know the comment section under my videos, I get lots of comments from friends and family who read the comment section. They go, oh my gosh, there's so much information below there. So it's not always questions, which I don't mind, but there's lots of good info below, things that I've forgotten, things I've left out, extra bonus tips. So if you've got some, whack them down in the comment section below so we can all learn from them. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and share the video around, because that helps my channel out heaps. Like a big juicy mango harvest. That's how much it helps it out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now. Cheers.